Hello everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Digital Illustration with Adobe Illustrator and to session 4 where we'll be looking at placing images, clipping masks, compound paths, and gradients. So let's first look at how to quickly put images into your file. The first method is simple. It's just simply cutting and pasting into your file, and I suspect many of you have already done it this way already. So how you do that is basically you can just cut and paste from anywhere on your computer or even from your browser, as I'll do here. And of a gold leaf texture. So I went to a bunch of websites trying to look for a gold leaf texture, and I found this one that I liked. So all I'm going to do is just right click, copy the image, and then I'll just go back to my Illustrator and I'll just hit Control V. And then there we have it. So there we have a texture that we can use later on in the demo. All right, so the second method is to use file place to create a link to an image within your file. So in this case, if you update the original file, then any links to it will also be updated. You can place another Adobe Illustrator file or Photoshop file. It works best when this original image file is editable. So to do it, we'll just go to File, Place, and I'm going to place in the file from last week. And I'll place it in right here. All right, so if I change the original file of this, say I go and turn the background to be another color. So in this case, let's just say, let's turn it to this yellow. And then I hit save. Then if I go back to my original file, I should get a dialog box that will update it. And if not, then I will go to Windows, Links, and then you'll see right here that there is a little danger sign, which means that this file has been modified. So if I just click on this one and go into my menu up here and I click Update Link, you'll see that the file changes in color. So this is a great way if you want to incorporate multiple files together and then you only need to edit one of them and then you can update it across all your media. Okay, so now that we've looked into placing images into our file, we can move on to clipping masks. So what is a clipping mask? A clipping mask is like a group, but the topmost object acts as a frame for the objects underneath. So here we see an image of clouds, and if I put a rectangle on top of it, sort of like a window, and this is on top of all my images, then if I select everything, and I go into Object and Clipping Mask and click Make, then you'll see that all of my clouds are contained within the topmost layer of the rectangle that I just drew. So that is one example. If you want to place an image within a frame, that's one way to use a clipping mask. So if you want to edit anything within your window, all you have to do is double click on your clipping mask, just like as if you would in a group, and then you can move things individually. So I can, if I want to remove the clouds around a little bit, I could do that. Or if I even want to change the frame, maybe make it into a really narrow window, I could do that as well. And if I want to change the color of the sky, maybe make it a little bit lighter, I can do that as well. So that is one way we can use clipping masks. There are many ways to use clipping masks, but the main way to use them is to put texture or images into shapes. So one example would be if I want to put lines into this character's dress right here. So I'm just going to use my brush tool and I'm going to just draw a whole swath of lines over it, just like that. And just like that. So you can see that looks a little bit messy there. But what I can do is now I can choose my dress shape right here, and then I can move it to the front, or I can actually make a copy of it. And then I'm just going to paste it right in front in the same area. So Control F, and then you can see that it covers up the lines. And then now, since I know that is on top, I can now select my lines, and then I can make a clipping path out of that. So I'll go into my menu bar, Object, Clipping Mask, and then make. So you'll notice that the shortcut key is Control-7, which is very handy. And then now you can see that you can contain all your lines within the clipping mask right here. Yeah, so this is one way of putting in a little bit of texture into your image. You can also use clipping mask to put another image inside a shape. So we can use our gold texture that we had from before, and then we can just make it a little bit bigger to fit the background where we're going to place it. And then now we have our gold texture on top, but we don't want this to be our clipping mask, so we're just going to move it down to the back. And then we're going to take our background shape and we're going to select our texture, and then we can use the shortcut key now, Control-7, to make a clipping mask. And now you can see that we have a beautiful gold texture in the background of our image. So that's another way we can use clipping masks to put textures in, and we'll explore this again when we make our compound paths. So let's talk about compound paths. So what is a compound path? A compound path is also like a group, but instead of grouping different objects together, it turns multiple paths and objects into one object. You can still edit the paths, but they all have the same appearance. So let's think about a donut shape. It seems like this is one shape, but it's actually comprised of two circles. So we have the outer circle, and we also have the inner circle. If I move the inner circle, then you can kind of see the donut shape sort of changes. But you can also see that the inner circle sort of acts as a window inside the larger circle so that this brown shape can be seen through behind it. So in the same case of the donut shape, if I decide to change it into outlines, and I want to just change one of, say, the outer line into another color, say red, you'll notice that the inside circle also changes with it because they're part of the same object. And even though it's not selected, it will also change with the color, as a compound path can only have one appearance. So again, if I decide to change maybe the inside circle into a dotted line, you'll see that the outside line also becomes dotted, again, because these two paths of the compound shape are linked and can only have one appearance. So knowing this, you might want to use compound paths when you want to have multiple shapes with the same appearance. So for instance, I can go into my compound path by double clicking on it, and then I'll just add some more paths to it, just by alt dragging it out. And then if I want to have all of these objects to continually have the same appearance, then, and I just want to update it, then if I update one, then they'll all update. So that's one use for compound paths. Another interesting use of compound paths is that if you want to create some interesting intersections and overlapping shapes. So say in this example, let's turn the fill color back into black. Now you'll see if I have two of the objects sort of intersecting on top of each other, then you'll get an interesting intersection. And if I bring another one in, you'll see that I also have an intersection here as well. It doesn't work too great if you have too many shapes on it, but if you just have two shapes overlapping on top of each other, you can get some interesting results. So in this compound path, all you have to do is alt drag, maybe resize, and then you can create some interesting intersections just like that. So another way we can use compound paths is to make stencils. So in this instance, say I want to make the stencil of the word hello. I'll just use my type tool and type onto the board, and then I will just make it a lot bigger, and then we'll be using this. So right now we can't do anything with this as type. So what we need to do is we need to go to Object, and we'll hit Expand, and hit OK. And then now you can see that we have expanded our text into editable shapes. So already we can tell that the E and the O have sort of a shape contained within each other, just like in our donut example. So if I was to make a stencil, I would select all of this, and then I would go into Compound Path and Release. So since that these turned all black, I know that these shapes would fall out of my stencil. So what I need to do is I just need to cut a shape into there so that to avoid our shapes falling out. So we actually don't want to have any compound paths in a stencil. So in this respect, we can just draw a little line, maybe in white, and then we can use that to, we can make our stencil not have any compound paths. So next example right here would be, we'll just take our white shape and our text, and then we'll just use our shape builder tool, and then I'll just select red right here so you can see it, and then we'll select all of that. And then now that we've isolated the shapes, I will just group them together, and then so I can go inside the group by double clicking into it, and then I will just select all the red. I will cut that, and then I'll select everything else and delete it, and then I'll just paste the stencil back in, and I'll get on my shape. So now if I make a compound path and then I release that compound path, nothing should happen, which tells me that my stencil is all right for use. So a main way I like to use compound paths is in conjunction with clipping masks. So say in this example, I want to put a gold texture into the details of the image, say in the eyes and in the pattern of the dress. So to do this, I would then select all the shapes and then turn those into compound paths and in a clipping mask. So I could go with each shape and then put each shape with a clipping mask on the texture, but that would require multiple copies of the same texture, which wouldn't be a very efficient use and would make my file really big. So the best way to go about it is to select all the shape that you want the texture to go inside, make a compound path out of that, and then use that as a clipping mask for your texture. So here, I have all my groups, all my shapes ungrouped. So I'll just use my selection tool and select the shapes that I want to have the texture inside. So I'll just choose selections inside the earrings maybe. Within the dress, I'll just select those. And I'm just holding Shift to select all my shapes. And then I wanted to put it in the eyes as well for a dramatic effect. All right, so now I could just turn this into a compound path, but I like to make a copy of it and paste it around on top just in case I need to go back and fix it. So I'm going to copy it, Control C, and I'm going to paste it in front. So you can do Control F to paste it right on top of it. So, and with that, I'm also going to just change the color for you to see very quickly what is selected. So everything in pink here is selected. So now I'm just going to go into Object, Compound Path, and Make. All right, so now I'll select my pink compound path. I will hold Shift, select my gold texture. Oops. I'll select my gold texture right here. And then I'll make a clipping mask. Just go Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. And then now you can see that we have a very interesting gold texture within our image. Finally, let's talk a bit about gradients. Gradients are a nice way to add a little bit of depth to an otherwise flat illustration. There are a couple approaches, but my preferred method is just to use the default gradient supplied in Illustrator and then work with that. So to apply a gradient is quite easy. You just need to select the object you want to apply the gradient into. So let's say in the background right here. And then we'll just hit our swatches panel. And then you can see right here that we actually have 3 gradient samples here. So you can choose a simple black to white one, an orange one, and one that goes from blue to transparent. The first one, the black and white one, and this transparent one are ones I use often. You can also find more gradients inside your swatch library. So if you just hit on the menu bar in your swatches panel and go down to your open swatch library and then gradients, you'll see that there are plenty of different gradients that you can use. I seldom use these, but they are there if you want to try them out. So my preferred method to use gradients is to just use the simple gradient panel that we can find under Windows. So here, all we have to do is we just select our shapes that we want to apply the gradient to. In this case, I'm just going to apply it over the face to give it just a little bit of depth of color. So I can just open up the gradient panel, again, Windows gradient, and then I'll just click on the gradient up at the top here, and I'll just change it to black and white, but that's fine. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double click on these little circles on the slider right down here. And then I'm just going to choose the flesh tones that we had from before. That one, which is my highlight color. And I'm also going to just choose on the dark one, I'm just going to choose the mid-tone value that I have as well. So just this one right here. And you can see that there's actually a slight transition now between both colors. And then we can also change the direction of the gradient just by moving this value around. So you can kind of see right now, it looks like it's coming from the top down, which gives it a nice little depth of color. So we'll just keep it like that. And then we can try it again with our shadow underneath the brow. So we'll just select those two shapes again. And this time you'll notice that it uses our last gradient. So I'll just select on those ones again. But this time I will use this color, but I will want to use, instead of having the light color, even though it looks a bit quite nice, I'm just going to use the darker color just like that. And then that looks all right. And then you can also just move it around as well to see what fits. So we probably want the darker part now coming from the top. So just sort of like that. Oh, and you can see it kind of stops. So you can also go the other direction, just like that. And then just adjust it like that. All right, so that looks pretty good to me. And then for the ears, you can do the same, but we can just use our eyedropper tool right here, and then just select maybe the darker color right here. All right, so, and we can also do that to the neck. All right, so here we have a simple way to use gradients. If you want to adjust the gradients just a little bit more, say just on the main part of the face, we can just select wherever there's a gradient, and then we'll just select the gradient tool in our toolbar. And then you'll see that now you can see how the gradient sort of spreads across the shape. So here you can sort of make the gradient a little shorter. You can sort of control the shape of it, and you should also be able to change its rotation. Yeah, just if you hover out here, then you can kind of change the angle of the gradient. So just like that, and that should give you a little bit more control too. You can change the type of gradients too. I like to use the linear one the most, but say if I want to make a radial gradient, I could do the same thing, and then just up here we can just click a radial and then just turn it into radial. And if you want to fine tune it, again, you can just use your gradient tool, and then you can fine tune it right here. You can even switch the colors around just like that. And then if you want to, you can double click and, you know, change the colors if you like, just like that, to give a bit of vignette look. Another gradient tool that is quite interesting is the freeform gradient tool. So here, let's just select our background gradient again, and then we will select the freeform gradient in the gradient panel. And then you'll see that now we have a bunch of points all in the quadrants with different color values. Actually, that looks quite nice already. But what we can do with this one is basically we can select our own colors. So say we want to just use maybe colors from the background or from the image. And then we can just change the colors, and we can even add more points to give it a bit of a watercolor effect. So which is quite nice. And then, yeah, we can just create it like that. And then if you want to make it go out a little bit further, you can just extend them just a little bit. I don't use this tool that much, but I think it's kind of interesting and it creates some nice background colors. Um, so you can play around with it, and it might be something fun that you'll like to use in your own illustrations. All right, so that's everything that I wanted to talk about today. Clipping, how to place images, clipping masks, compound paths, and a little bit about gradients. So hopefully you found that helpful and are inspired to make your own illustration now. All right, thanks for watching.